you'd think that the blue light cameras that we have all over the city to prevent and help, the police in situations like that would work. But as I'm going to bring up, I think that the only cameras in our city that work are the red light cameras.
Shocker.
Now, we've talked about this before. And this is my little pet peeve, not because I endorse.
Gonna get on his soapbox.
Here we go. Not because I endorse running reds and not because I endorse speeding. But as we know, these revenue grabs and these gotcha traps all over the city are really designed less for safety and more to generate revenue for the city. Now, this came, we heard about this a couple weeks ago. There were a couple signs throughout the city at the red light cameras that mistakenly listed or mistakenly identified the times. Apparently, these signs said that these cameras were active between 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. Now, the signs that were posted improperly, if you get a ticket and the sign says 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., then you're not supposed to get a ticket after 9:30 a.m., regardless of whether or not that was a mistake. But tickets were issued throughout the city. So let's play this story from CBS Chicago and kind of come up to date on it.
Constantly flashing.
You see that flashing light? And you know you got caught speeding. But more drivers in Chicago are on the hook for tickets they didn't deserve. Last month, CBS 2 investigator Dorothy Tucker discovered 2 speed camera warning signs in the city had the wrong information on them. The signs listed enforcement times ending at 9 or 9:30 a.m. when they should have read p.m. Investigation, the city fixed the 2 signs, tickets and refund the money. We wish we could tell you the checks are in the mail, but no word yet on that.
Of course they're not in the mail. They'll never be in the mail.
Not
We got undeserved tickets than we first reported. Turns out
More.
The 2 warning signs had been wrong for months until we discovered the city's mistake. In all, more than 40,000 drivers got tickets during the months the warning signs were wrong, and the city fined them more than $1 million. We'll keep pressing for answers about when they'll pay up. And to see Dorothy's original report on those speed cameras, go to the CBS.
So I understand, Kira, that have you checked the traffic Scamera citations you got to cross-check the times? They might owe you, well, if you haven't paid them yet.
I just paid him today. And so
you might owe you some money then.
They might. I actually told my husband, I was like, oh, I have to check. And my husband's like, you sped through a park area. You owe money no matter what. And it's like, oh,
did he speed through that park area in the middle of the night where the park was nowhere near the camera? But because I see a lot. So when they said that there was the speed cameras, not the red light cameras, but the speed cameras were put at parks to protect people crossing the streets. Usually the park is like a block away from where that camera is. And like in my neighborhood over on Peterson near Lincoln Avenue, there's a bridge over the river. And that's where the speed camera is because, people are like climbing out of the river, crossing the bridge from the park where the speed camera is to protect them. That's where that particular camera went up. But we also know these cameras are are usually installed more in neighborhoods on the west sides. You don't see a lot downtown. You see them more in communities where people are already struggling financially. And, you got to dip into those pockets. But I will say to kind of end this story on.
Well, those are also going to be the people that don't contest.
Right. Yeah, and they just look. You can contest it, and you can actually properly contest based on another video that I did previously on the fact that the camera tickets do not properly identify your make on the tickets, which is a violation of city and state municipal codes. I won 2 actions against the city until suddenly they started telling their judges that, what do they call them, the hearings officers and the judges, not to accept that defense anymore because they're not, the law hasn't changed. They just decide rules for me, not for me. And we're going to continue to enforce these tickets, even though we're not identifying the make of your vehicle, to make sure that the plate that's in the camera video matches the make of the vehicle so that we can prove that the plate wasn't stolen and put on another vehicle.
Right.
And you're actually responsible for the ticket. They ignore that.
Wow.
And there was a judge that said, apparently, just looking at the make and the picture was enough, not cross-checking with the Secretary of State's office, which is bullshit. And they know it's bullshit, but because they know that there would have been a class action lawsuit against them for that, you're talking about decades of tickets issued where they don't identify the make of the vehicle, as the Illinois and state municipal or the Chicago and state municipal code say. Now, we have a group in Chicago called the Citizens to Abolish Red Light Cameras, and as last reported by them, Mark Wallace heads this group. And I'll just talk about what the update is from them. So as of March of 2021, State Representative Deanne Mazzacci, a Republican of the 47th and Elmhurst, who has supported Oakbrook's efforts to have red light cameras at 22nd Street and Route 33 removed, has introduced a bill that would ban all red light cameras in Illinois. House Bill 1718 was filed February 11th and assigned March 19th to Transportation, Vehicles, and Safety Committee. The bill amends the Illinois Vehicle Code by repealing a section providing authority to use automated traffic law enforcement systems at intersections in which cameras are used to photograph or video record a motor vehicle's failure to stop and yield as required by traffic control signals. The bill also imposes limits on the power of local governments to use automated speed enforcement systems to provide recorded images of a motor vehicle for the purpose of recording its speed. Home rule communities would not be exempt from the provisions of the bill, which means Chicago could not use home rule laws to be exempt from what the state might pass in this bill. Can't come fast enough. I'm sure the pandemic is slowing down legislation down there, but we're going to be reporting on that if and when this particular bill hopefully passes. When red light cameras are not about motorist safety, but cynical revenue grabs, when red light cameras are implicated in pay-to-play practices, and those with the power of oversight like IDOT cannot be counted on to keep the players honest, and when our residents insist over and over again that they want them gone, but local elected officials either won't listen or can't help, then the only solution is for either red light camera reform or to end them altogether.
Yeah.
Let's keep our fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, red light cameras actually, in my opinion, they cause a lot of issues. The issues that they create are not equitable to like the safety that they provide. It's just not worth it. I've seen people slam on their brakes when they shouldn't be, just to avoid ticketing. And what it really does is it takes like the humanity out of decision making, which in some instances, yeah, that's probably a good idea. But I think when it comes to making driving choices, if it's raining and you're going a certain speed and it is smarter for you to just go than it is to stop.
Kira, that's exactly the incident I was involved in that I appealed it and I won. I appealed it after paying an attorney to go to court for me, which cost more than the ticket, which is how they prevent people from actually appealing or, trying to take it as far as they can.
Because if you don't get a lawyer, then it's going to take your time anyway. And how much is your time worth?
Well, a lawyer's also going to know better how to navigate the system in front of an appeals judge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've seen so many ridiculous choices being made due to a red light camera. I don't have numbers in front of me. I don't want to speak too much off the cuff, but they are detrimental in a lot of ways, and I don't think they actually create more safety.
Well, they don't. And the pay-to-play scandals that were previously reported by, I think, the Chicago Tribune just show how egregiously that this was never about safety. It was about local officials, specifically, I think it was in Elmhurst, where they were doing these deals where they were taking kickbacks to install these cameras, making the money, and it wasn't about the safety. It was about who was greasing their own pocket.
Of course it was. Of course it flippin' was. Jesus.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed and keep following this story on the speed camera revenue grabs.
I wanted to highlight, Jerry, real quick. I know we have, I think, one more story, but I want to make sure that it gets heard. PHS King wanted our attention around the People's Party inviting everyone to take part in hashtag Occupy Congress on Labor Day. Millions across the country are facing evictions and unemployment that is getting worse by the day. So hashtag Occupy Congress starting Labor Day. Make sure to check that out. And it is, it looks like it is PHX King. Is it Phoenix King? Mentions Nick Brana. So I'm guessing it is something that is being spearheaded by Movement for People's Party. He says the People's Party. I just wanted to make sure that it was the same organization, and it seems to be. So
Yeah.
check that out. Hashtag Occupy Congress, Labor Day. There are actions starting.
Well, as far as our last story goes, I was going to share. This was kind of an editorial by Street Blogs Chicago regarding, more revenue grabs with parking meters. It's a bit of a long editorial. It was written by Michael Rogers. I'll just go through a little bit of it because, it further explores how we're just like constantly screwed, whether it's the parking meters or the traffic camera program. When former Mayor Richard M. Daley forced the passage of the contract that sold off Chicago's parking meters near the end of his administration in 2008, he struck one of the worst deals for Chicago ever. The contract, which outsourced the operational responsibilities and revenue rights for Chicago's metered parking to private investors represented by Morgan Stanley for a period of 75 years. Now, that money, I think he got was
Can you believe that?
75 years, and they went through the money from the deal, I think, in a year, whatever that amount was, has been detested ever since. And where did that money go? Drivers hated the metered rate increases. Everyone would have preferred the parking revenue stay with the city. Nowadays, hating the deal is like eating hot dogs without ketchup.
Right.
It's part of the city's cultural heritage. The contract has been particularly frustrating for sustainable transportation advocates. One particularly confounding clause dictates that the number of metered spots remain fixed just above 30,000 citywide. In other words, Chicago has very limited control over significant portions of its streetscape because it must maintain these metered parking spots, and also that some investors can profit easily. I think some of the investors were also based in Dubai. So Chicago street parking meters are siphoning money overseas to Saudi Arabia.
Hey,
Dubai.
People in Dubai got to eat,
Yeah, I know. The emirs with all of their wealth and their palaces. Oh my goodness. This often complicates or blocks efforts to install robust bus or bike lanes, let alone pedestrianizing streets. If metered spaces are removed to make room for more productive uses of right-of-way, Chicago is required to either create new metered spaces elsewhere or pay a fee to the concessionaire.
This is something that blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
The private company that owns the meters basically owns the street.
Yeah. Not the taxpayers who pay the taxpayer dollars to maintain and or the streets to begin with. So yeah, I mean, I what's the solution to this? I don't know. I just thought it kind of, when I came across it along with the traffic cameras and how much money is coming out of our pockets.
This is completely representative of how government officials sell out, right?
Chicago, especially.
Let's look at this, like what, and one of the things that's really important about looking at how Chicago operates is largely it is a microcosm of the larger picture, right? So we just had AU come on at the beginning of at the top of the show talking about, well, we did an action because there's this $3.5 trillion bill that we want to get through, and right now, as it stands, it looks like only a $1 trillion infrastructure bill is going to go through, and inside of that $1 trillion infrastructure bill, there's a bunch of giveaways to private corporations so that we can pay tolls to use streets for the rest of our lives. And this is that, just the parking meters, right? So it's like, what are we getting ourselves into when we basically sell off our roads to private industry, and that means that if they don't think it's a good idea to create a bike lane instead of a money-making opportunity, then they're going to strike down that bike lane. And, and I'm talking about a single bike lane on a single street in the city of Chicago, and then upscale that. And then where's the conversation for climate change?
Right. Exactly.
And it's really gross.
Yeah.
And this is exactly
predatory.
Exactly the deal that our national legislators are like just about to make. It parallels that. And
well, this author,
classic neoliberalism, right?
Well, that's all neoliberalism is about. I mean, neoliberalism is about essentially adopting what we used to think were Republican policies, because look, there's more money. The Democrats saw there was more money to be made by playing the same game as the Republicans did by embracing big business corporations and Wall Street. We just got two sides of the same coin. Now, this author of this particular article does offer a solution. He says, but as long as the city aims to work within the contract we've all been stuck with, we're acknowledging the deal's legitimacy, and we shouldn't be prioritizing private interests over public ones. And this speaks to what you just shared. It leaves citizens on the hook for all the costs while investors profit. Chicago shouldn't tolerate any of these things. We all know it was a bad deal. We all know Daley screwed us. Let's just throw up our arms and do what's best and what we want to do finally and break the deal. Reneging on the contract would likely cause some pain for Chicago. It would almost certainly result in a lawsuit, and it would likely probably require the city to pay handsomely in a court settlement. But we should really ask, what's wrong with that? If we took over the meters again, that revenue could be means for paying back the debt. It took less than 15 years for the investors to start making profits on their investments. Why shouldn't the city plan for the same? Furthermore, Chicago has options to challenge the contract. The city should explore using legal tools like its reserve powers or force majeure, or irresistible greater force that prevents someone from fulfilling a contract to attack its underpinning structure. Using the former, the city can argue it needs complete control over what is now metered on street parking to effectively carry out its right and responsibility to manage traffic. Regarding the latter, if ever there was a force majeure, it is the climate crisis. What you just said, Kara, you come so well prepared. There's no question that the transportation is a major contributor to climate change, and the city must be able to act accordingly to reduce the associated emissions. That requires breaking the contract. Chicago could also force arbitration or simply ignore the deal. It's not like Chicago hasn't taken such bold moves before. I find it incredibly ironic that City Hall has for years said we're stuck with the contract, when the mayor who forced it through is equally famous for literally destroying an airport in the dark of night because he wanted to. So why not do the same thing with the parking meter deal?
Yeah. This parking meter deal actually went into effect about 1.5 years after I moved to Chicago, and I remember being astounded. Astounded
As
at it.
E. Heller shares, Chicago could do the Darth Vader thing and alter the deal. Thanks, E. Heller. I can always rely on him to toss something into the conversation to lighten it up a little bit.